Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Joining me today is Romana King, who is Director of Content for Zolo. Thanks for joining us today, Romana.
Great to be here, Mario.
Well, you guys put out a very interesting report today, Best Neighborhoods to Buy a Home in Calgary. And I'll just read off the top five. First of all, number one was Abbeydale, that followed by Livingston, Southview, Bonavista Downs, and Cityscape. Those were the top five. Tell me how, I guess you came to that conclusion, and what was the report all about, and how the different factors fall into play here.
Well, we all know that affordability is top of mind. Everyone is talking about it. Doesn't matter where you live in Canada. And we came at this report with the idea of, if you're a first-time buyer, so if you're currently renting, is there a tipping point, or is there a moment where you should say, you know what, it would probably be better to buy versus rent? So that's how we started this report. And as a result, it's kind of what motivate us to collect the data that we did. We collected sales data from the Calgary Real Estate Board. We looked at almost 200 neighborhoods in the city of Calgary. And we looked at average prices for the last 3 years in each neighborhood for single family homes. And so from that data, we were able to see, two things. What would the average, house cost in that area? So that would help us understand what would the average mortgage payment would be, making some assumptions: 20% down, 5-year mortgage, 25-year amortization. And then based on that, we could then compare that to what the average rental rate would be. And so for that, we looked at average 1-bedroom and average 2-bedroom rental prices for each area, because they don't have neighborhood information at the Calgary the CMHC. So we got our data from there, and they don't do it by neighborhood, but they do it by area. So the Northeast Calgary, Southeast Calgary, that area. So we're able to compare mortgage and rental rates to determine what would be more cost effective. There is a bit of a problem with that, which is if you just look at pricing, you might always have a sort of a list weighted by maybe less desirable, less pricey neighborhoods. So we had to throw a few other metrics in there to make sure that we're capturing desirability as well as value.
Okay. So I'm surprised. I was surprised when I saw Abbeydale number one. Can you talk a little bit about why it reached that number one status?
Yeah, I mean, what's going to motivate you to buy if it's affordable? So definitely affordability was a big issue. But we also looked at, is this a neighborhood where home values are appreciating and have appreciated the last 3 years? So there's momentum. It's not just appreciating or spiking in the last year when we've seen this huge run up in real estate, but is it appreciating consistently, in the last few years? And Abbeydale certainly has. But it's also really affordable. So if you're a renter and you're renting in Northeast Calgary, Abbeydale is a neighborhood you should definitely take a look at, because this is also an extremely affordable neighborhood for anyone first entering the market. You're going to be looking at a mortgage, as long as you've got 20% down, you're going to be looking at a monthly mortgage payment that is comparable or even slightly less than the average rent in that area.
That's interesting. A couple of the other factors you looked at, was crime rates and the amenity score. Can you talk a little bit about? Obviously, crime rates are pretty, we know what that's all about. So, and the stats will be there to show it. But I'm curious about amenity score. What is included in that, and what do you look for when you're looking at that category?
So really, you're looking for a neighborhood that is a community. So you can walk to amenities that would provide some sort of context for staying in the neighborhood. Is it a grocery store? Is it a neighborhood pub? Is it a coffee bar? Is it a library or a community center? Green space is also factored into that. So the higher the sort of the amenity, the walk score, the transit score, the more access a resident would have in that community. So if you're 22, you'll have more dependency on cars. You'll need to drive to stores, drive to the community center. Where if you're higher, often, urban centers, when you're right in the middle of an urban center, they'll have a very high amenity score, a very high walk score, a very high transit score, because you don't need a car to get to transit, to get to the green park, to the park or the grocery store.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I want to go back to affordability just a little bit, and how important that is. I keep hearing and reading about this in Canada right now. And actually, I've done a couple of interviews recently with people like Phil Soper, who is president of Royal LePage Canada, and Elton Nash, who is with the Remax of Western Canada. And everybody tells me, you know what, the inventory is low out there, which is driving prices up, and it's something that's continued to grow. Can you talk a little bit about that? And where do you think prices are headed?
The inventory it's extraordinarily low and has historically been low for a long time now. And when I say a long time, there are periods where you'll see inventory shrink. Usually people feel a little bit insecure about what's going on. They want to hold on to sort of their security, their home. But inventory has been low for almost half a decade at this point, and that's a long time. That means that's a long time for a lot of buyers and pent up buying demand, and not enough inventory in the market to meet that demand. And of course, what happens when that happens? You have a seller's market and prices go up. So a lot of people anticipated that this huge run up, people first anticipated when the pandemic hit, that real estate and everything would grind to a halt. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Then there was the secondary prediction of, well, obviously this has to stop and prices are going to plummet because, well, it hasn't, because that inventory, the supply issue is still not being addressed. There's a distinct lack of supply. And it's not just, we focus on resale, the lack of listings coming on the market. But if you look at statistics that have been, accumulated over the last decade, we can see that we are historically, as a nation, underdeveloping. So we're not building enough new units coming onto the market.
Why is that? Why haven't we built?
I mean, there's a number of factors. I think one of the biggest factors is zoning and bylaw. It takes a long time if you want to redevelop land. And developers know this. They have plans 1 to 5 to 10 years out. When I talk to developers, when everything hit in 2009 and then everything hit in 2020, the question was, are you worried? And they're like, no, we have business on the books for the next 5 years. We can ride this storm for the next 5 years before we even start to consider maybe shifting. So it takes a while for things to happen. I think that overall, all jurisdictions within Canada really need to go back to the planning books and understand how their zoning is holding up that process, not just for developers, but for small time developers. Densification is really not, there's not a lot of infrastructure, so planning, zoning, process to help with densification, smart densification. And all of this plays to the lack of supply. When you have incentives, sorry, Mario, I keep cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you have incentives, so when government says, hey, builders, we're going to give you tax incentives, or municipalities say, hey, we're going to waive these development fees, you do see an influx of builders and money come into that development. So really, we need to look at, as a whole, we need to look at where does development need to occur, and what can we do to incentivize the private market to come in and invest that money to allow that to grow.
I'm just curious, Romana, in terms of this report, how many cities did you look at? Or did you?
We're doing this city by city. So we're looked at Calgary, and we've got the GTA coming out. We wanted to take a sort of a granular approach and just understand what was going on. And then Calgary is one of the more manageable markets in that there is pent up demand, but there also is insecurity in that, is this a good time to buy if you're a first time buyer? And we wanted to address that question.
Okay, and last question, where can people find the report for the
If they go to Zolo Homebase, which is zolo.ca, we have this report as well as other numerous reports on there that help sort of contextualize the decision.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for joining us today, Romana.
Thank you, Mario.
All right, that was Romana King, who is Director of Content for Zolo. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Thanks for joining us today.